On my 70th birthday, my sister Catherine looked at me from across the table and said with a smile, "Eleanor, tell me, are you enjoying your $500,000 trust fund?" I looked at her, confused, not understanding. The words didn't fully register. I asked slowly, feeling something in my chest tighten. "What trust fund are you talking about?" My son Michael dropped his fork. My daughter-in-law Jessica went as white as the wall. The two of them looked like they wanted to disappear right then and there, swallowed up by the marble floor of their own home. Then Catherine turned to them, and with that firm voice she always had, she asked them directly, "What did you do with the money?" The silence that followed wasn't a normal silence. It was heavy. It was guilty. It was the kind of silence that screams truths no one wants to hear. That night, the house didn't smell like a party. It smelled like an ending, one of those that you sense is coming but don't want to name. I was sitting at the head of the table, as usual, as if I were just another ornament among the expensive plates and crystal glasses I never had in my own home. 70 years. 70 years. And my son Michael had insisted so much on celebrating my birthday in his mansion that I couldn't refuse. Not because I wanted to be there, but because a mother never stops seeking affection from her children, even if it costs her dignity. My name is Eleanor. I was born in a small town where women learned from girlhood to be quiet, to obey, to smile, even if everything inside was breaking. I married young. I had 2 children. I was widowed 5 years ago. And since then, I've lived alone in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, surviving on a social security check that barely covers my food. Michael lives in a 3-story house with a yard and a pool. Jessica, my daughter-in-law, wears designer clothes and gets a new car every 2 years. My grandchildren go to private schools where the monthly tuition costs more than my rent for 3 months. I always thought they just worked hard, that they deserved it, that I had no right to ask for anything because I had already done my part by raising them. But that night, when Catherine spoke those words, something inside me broke. Or maybe it woke up. Catherine is my younger sister. She's 65 years old and lives in another city. She's successful. She has her own consulting firm. She travels the world. She wears sharp pantsuits and French perfume. We see each other rarely, maybe once or twice a year. Not because we don't get along, but because our lives took completely different paths. She built an empire. I built a family. Or so I thought. Catherine arrived that night with a gift wrapped in gold paper and a bottle of wine that surely cost more than my month's groceries. She hugged me tight, as always. She told me I looked good, though we both knew it was a lie. I was thinner, more tired, more faded. She sat next to me and started talking about her trips, her projects, about life in general. Michael and Jessica smiled stiffly from the other side of the table. My grandchildren were in their rooms, probably glued to their phones. The conversation was superficial, awkward, full of long pauses that no one knew how to fill. Then Catherine poured herself more wine and looked at me with that expression she always had when she was about to say something important. "Eleanor," she said, "I want to ask you something I've been curious about for a while." I nodded, having no idea what was coming. "Are you enjoying your $500,000 trust fund?" she asked casually, as if asking about the weather. The world stopped. My ears were ringing. $500,000? A trust fund? I didn't understand any of it. I looked at Catherine as if she were speaking another language. "What trust fund are you talking about?" I asked, my voice so small I barely recognized it. Catherine frowned. She stared at me. "The trust fund your husband left for you before he died. You're not using it." I felt the floor move beneath my feet. My husband. My late husband. A trust fund? He never told me about that. I never saw any documents. I never received any money. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. "I don't know anything about that," I murmured, feeling tears start to sting my eyes. Catherine set her glass down on the table with a sharp tap. Her face changed. She was no longer the kind sister who arrived with gifts. She was the relentless businesswoman who tolerates no lies or betrayals. She turned to Michael and Jessica, who were completely frozen, like statues of salt. "What did you do with the money?" Catherine asked, her voice so cold it chilled the entire room. Michael cleared his throat. He tried to smile. Aunt Catherine, I think there's a misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding, Catherine cut him off. I was there when your father signed those documents. I was a witness. $500,000 in a trust fund for Eleanor, with clear instructions for her to receive monthly payments for life. Where is that money? Jessica shot up from her chair so fast it almost fell over. I need to use the restroom, she mumbled, and practically ran out. Michael just stood there, opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. His eyes avoided mine. And in that moment, I knew. I knew my sister was telling the truth. I knew my son had stolen from me. I knew that everything he had, everything he showed off, everything that made me feel like a burden, had been built with my money. Mom, Michael started to say in that little boy voice he used when he'd done something wrong. Let me explain. But I held up my hand. I didn't want to hear it. Not yet. First, I needed to understand. I needed to process. I needed to breathe. Catherine took out her phone. I'm going to call Gregory Price, she said firmly. The lawyer who helped your father with the trust. He has all the copies. All the documents. Everything. Michael turned even paler. Aunt Catherine, that's not necessary. Oh, yes it is, Catherine replied, already dialing the number. I just sat there, staring at my plate of food I hadn't touched. Everything was spinning in my head. My husband had left me $500,000. $500,000. I had been living on less than $800 a month, skipping meals, wearing old clothes, feeling like a burden to my son. And all that time, he had my money. My money. The tears started to fall. I couldn't stop them. They weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of humiliation, of a betrayal so deep it split my soul. Catherine finished the call and put her hand on mine. Gregory is on his way over, she said softly. We're going to fix this, I promise you. Michael was still there, paralyzed, his face red and his forehead sweating. Jessica hadn't come back from the restroom. The birthday that was supposed to be a celebration had turned into a trial. And I, the guest of honor, was the only one who didn't know I had been the victim of a crime. To understand how I got to that moment, sitting at that table feeling like an idiot, you need to go back in time with me. You need to see who I was before that night. Before I discovered that my own blood had stolen the life I deserved. I was always the invisible woman, the one who served the coffee but never drank it, the one who cooked for everyone but ate the leftovers, the one who listened to everyone's problems but never spoke of her own. That's how I was raised. That's how I raised my children. That's how I lived for 70 years. My husband died 5 years ago of a sudden heart attack. He was a hard-working, honest man, quiet like me. He worked his whole life as an accountant for a mid-sized company. We weren't rich, but we never went hungry. We had a modest house, an old car, a simple life. Or so I thought. When he died, I was devastated. Not just from the pain of losing him, but because I felt completely lost. He handled all the money, all the papers, all the important decisions. I just signed where he told me to sign. I never asked. I never doubted. I trusted him completely. Michael took care of everything after the funeral. He organized the papers. He spoke to the lawyers. He explained to me that Dad had left some debts and that the Social Security check I was going to receive was small. He told me we had to sell the family home because we needed to pay off those debts. I accepted everything without question. What did I know about finances? What did I know about laws? I moved into a small apartment in a distant neighborhood, a one-bedroom place with a tiny kitchen and a bathroom that always had plumbing problems. The rent was $300 a month. My check was $750. I did the math every single day to make it stretch. I bought the cheapest items at the supermarket. I walked instead of taking the bus to save $1. I turned off lights the second I left a room. Michael visited me once a month. Maybe. He always arrived in a hurry, always with his phone in his hand. He'd give me $200 and tell me it was all he could do to help. I would thank him as if he were giving me the world. $200 that made the difference between eating chicken or just pasta that week. Jessica never came with him. She said she was busy with the kids, with work, with 1,000 things. The few times I did see her, she looked at me with a mixture of pity and contempt. Like I was an old piece of furniture that was no longer useful but couldn't be thrown away either. My grandchildren saw me as a stranger. When Michael invited me to their house for holidays, they barely said hello. They'd run upstairs to their rooms full of expensive toys and giant screens. I would stay downstairs, sitting in the enormous living room, feeling small, feeling out of place. I would see their house and not understand how my son had achieved so much. 3 floors, marble floors, imported furniture, a kitchen that looked like it was out of a magazine. Jessica would show off her designer handbags. Michael would talk about his investments. I just thought maybe he was smarter than his father, more ambitious, more capable. I never suspected that everything he had was mine. The days in my apartment were all the same. I'd get up early even though I had nothing to do. I'd drink watery instant coffee because the good kind was too expensive. I'd look out the window at the people rushing by to their jobs, their lives, their purposes. I didn't have one anymore. I'd clean the apartment even though it was already clean. I watched daytime soap operas that didn't interest me just to hear voices that weren't my own. I'd cook for one person and have leftovers that I'd save for the next day. And the next. And the next. The neighbors were nice but distant. Everyone worked. Everyone had busy families. I was the old lady in apartment 203, the one who said hello in the hall. The one who never caused problems. The one who paid her rent on time by selling off the few pieces of jewelry I had left when the money ran out. I had one friend. Susan. She lived in the apartment next door. She was a widow, like me, but she had a better pension. Her kids called her every day. They visited her on weekends. They paid for her trips. I envied her in silence. Susan noticed things. She'd ask me why my son was never around, why I wore the same clothes all the time, why she sometimes heard me crying at night when I thought no one could hear. One day, having tea at her apartment, she told me something that stuck with me. "Eleanor, you've always been the type to swallow everything, the one who endures, the one who stays quiet. But nobody is going to give you an award for suffering in silence. Sometimes you have to stop swallowing. Sometimes you have to spit out what's poisoning you." I laughed nervously. I told her I was fine, that I didn't need anything, that my son did what he could for me. But Susan just looked at me and shook her head. "One day, you're going to wake up, Eleanor. And I just hope it's not too late." I didn't understand her words then. I do now. The flashbacks hit me in waves. I remember when Michael was a boy and I worked cleaning houses to pay for his tutoring. I remember the sleepless nights when he was sick and I didn't have money for the doctor, but I took him anyway. I remember selling my wedding ring to help pay for his state university tuition. I also remember how he started to get embarrassed by me when he got older, how he stopped introducing me to his friends, how he'd ask me not to pick him up from school because the other kids made fun of my old clothes, how, when he married Jessica, they sat me in the back row of the church as if I were just another guest and not the groom's mother. I always told myself it was normal, that kids grow up and pull away, that I had to understand, that I couldn't be a burden. That word, burden. How many times did I hear it? How many times did I tell it to myself? I don't want to be a burden. I can't ask them for more. They've already done enough for me. I'm fine on my own. Lies. All lies I repeated to myself to avoid facing the truth. The truth that my son had emotionally abandoned me long before he stole my money. The truth that I had allowed them to treat me like garbage because I thought that was love. That was being a good mother. The weeks before my birthday were strange. Michael called me more often than usual. He insisted I come to his house for the celebration. He said Jessica was planning something special, that the kids wanted to see me. I accepted, excited. I thought that maybe they were finally including me, that maybe they finally saw me. Susan helped me get ready that night. She lent me a nice shawl. She did my hair. She told me I looked beautiful. But she also told me something else, something that sounded like a warning. If anything feels wrong tonight, don't you stay quiet. You are worth more than you think. I laughed. I told her to stop worrying, that I was just going to have dinner with my family, that everything would be fine. But as the taxi drove me toward Michael's house, something in my stomach was twisting, a feeling I couldn't name. As if my body knew something my mind still refused to accept. I arrived and the house was lit up. Soft music. The smell of expensive food. Michael opened the door with a big smile. Too big. Jessica greeted me with a kiss on the cheek. Too sweet. The kids came down to give me a quick hug before disappearing again. Too rehearsed. Everything was too much. I sat on that enormous sofa, feeling more alone than in my empty apartment. And then Catherine arrived. My sister. The one I didn't know would be there. The one Michael wasn't expecting. The one who held the key to unlock the box of lies he had built so carefully. Everything started to unravel 3 weeks before my birthday. Though I didn't know it at the time, I was still living my usual life. My small life. My life of surviving day to day on $750 a month and the hope that someday things would get better. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in my living room watching the news when the phone rang. It was Michael. That was already strange. He didn't call on Tuesdays. He called on Sundays. If that. And the conversations always lasted less than 5 minutes. "Mom," he said in a strange voice. A voice that was trying to sound casual but was filled with something I couldn't identify. "How are you?" "I'm fine, son. Is everything okay over there?" Yeah. Everything's fine." "Hey, I wanted to talk to you about your birthday. It's coming up, right?" My birthday. 70 years old. I hadn't thought much about it. What for? There was nothing to celebrate. Another year of loneliness. Another year of counting pennies. "Yes, on the 23rd, I replied without much enthusiasm. "Jessica and I want to do something special. A dinner at the house. How does that sound?" I was surprised. They never organized anything for me. My last birthday, I spent alone, eating a can of soup in front of the TV. "You don't have to bother," I said automatically. "I'm fine. I don't need anything. Mom, it's no bother. We want to do it. The kids want to be there too. It'll be nice." Something in his tone made me uncomfortable. He was too insistent, too anxious, but I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that maybe my son was finally seeing me, that maybe he finally cared. "All right," I accepted. "Thank you, son." "Perfect. I'll send a car for you that day. Don't worry about a thing." He hung up quickly. As always, I stood there with the phone in my hand, feeling a mix of excitement and distrust. Why now? Why this year? What had changed? The following days were the same as always. But I couldn't stop thinking about that dinner. I got my hopes up. I allowed myself to dream that maybe things between Michael and me could get better. That maybe he had reflected. That maybe he remembered everything I had done for him. A week later, Michael called again. This time his voice sounded more tense. "Mom, I need to ask you something. Have you talked to Aunt Catherine lately?" The question was odd. Catherine and I spoke every 2 or 3 months. Short conversations. She was always busy. I never had much to tell. "No, it's been about 2 months since I spoke to her." "Why?" "No reason. Just curious." "Hey, about the dinner. Let's keep it small. Just us. Close family. Sound good?" "Of course, son. Whatever you want." But something about that conversation left me uneasy. Why was he asking about Catherine? What did she have to do with my birthday? Susan noticed my anxiety. She always noticed everything. We were having tea at her apartment when I mentioned it. "He says he wants to throw a dinner for my birthday," I told her. "But I don't know. He sounds weird. Nervous." Susan put her cup down on the table and looked at me seriously. "Eleanor, do you trust your son?" The question hurt. He's my son. Of course I trust him. Even though he never visits you? Even though he has you living on less than what he spends on tips? Even though he lives in a mansion while you count pennies to buy bread? He does what he can for me. I defended him. I always defended him. It was my job. It's what mothers do. And what if he's not doing anything for you? What if he's doing everything against you? "Don't say that," I pleaded, feeling tears welling up. "Michael isn't like that." Susan sighed. She took my hand. "Eleanor, listen to me. You are a good woman. Too good. And good people always end up getting trampled by those who have no scruples. I'm not saying your son is a bad person. I'm just telling you to open your eyes. to not swallow everything they tell you without chewing it first. Her words floated in my head for days. I tried to ignore them. I tried to convince myself she was wrong, that she was just bitter, that she was projecting her own problems onto my life. But at night, when I couldn't sleep, I wondered, why did Michael live so well when I was left with nothing? Why had my husband left me only that miserable Social Security check if he worked for 40 years? Why had Michael handled all the paperwork without letting me see anything? One afternoon, I decided to look. I didn't know what I was looking for, exactly, but I needed to find something. Anything. I pulled out the box of documents I kept in the closet. Old papers, paid bills, photos, memories. At the bottom was a folder with some documents from my husband's funeral, receipts, certificates. A letter from the lawyer who handled everything. The letter was addressed to Michael. It said something about finalizing the estate procedures, but it didn't say anything specific. Nothing I could understand. There was a name. Gregory Price, attorney at law, with a phone number. I held that paper for a long time. Should I call? What would I say? What right did I have to meddle in things Michael had already resolved? But Susan's words echoed. Open your eyes. Don't swallow everything. I put the paper in my purse. I didn't call that day, or the next, but I carried it with me like it was a bomb I didn't dare to detonate. The Friday before my birthday, Michael showed up at my apartment unannounced. That never happened. He never came by without calling first. He knocked, and I almost jumped out of my skin. Son, what a surprise, I said, opening the door. He walked in, looking around as if it were the first time he'd been there, as if he'd never seen the poverty I lived in, as if he were just realizing how miserable my life was. Mom, I need to talk to you, he said, without sitting down. Did something happen? Are you okay? Yeah. I just wanted to confirm you're coming to the dinner on Tuesday. It's important that you're there. Of course I'll be there. You already told me. He ran a hand through his hair. He was sweating even though the apartment was cold. And you haven't talked to anyone? No one has called you asking about Dad? About money stuff? My heart started to beat faster. No. Who would call me? Nobody. Just asking. Sometimes scammers call widows saying there are inheritances or things like that. If anyone calls you, don't pay them any mind, and let me know immediately. All right, son. He gave me a quick kiss on the forehead and left as quickly as he'd arrived. I just stood there in the middle of the living room, feeling like something very bad was about to happen. I couldn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned, thinking about everything. The strange calls, the unexpected visit, the warnings about scammers, the insistence on the dinner. The next day, I took out the paper with the lawyer's number. I stared at it for hours. Finally, with trembling hands, I dialed. A secretary answered. Price Law Group. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'd like to speak with Mr. Gregory Price. Who may I say is calling? Eleanor. I'm Arthur's widow. He handled some of my husband's affairs 5 years ago. There was a pause. 1 moment, please. The wait felt eternal. I almost hung up 3 times, but something stopped me. Finally, a man's voice. Mrs. Eleanor? This is Gregory Price. What a surprise to hear from you after all this time. I'm sorry to bother you, I began, my voice trembling. I just wanted to ask about my husband's papers. You helped with everything after his death. Yes, that's right. I worked with your son, Michael, on all the procedures, and there was something about a trust fund. The silence on the other end was deafening, so long I thought the call had dropped. Mrs. Eleanor, he finally said, his voice very serious. I think you and I need to talk. Urgently. The morning of my birthday dawned gray. As if the sky knew what I still refused to accept. I got up early, even though the dinner wasn't until that night. I hadn't slept, thinking about the conversation with the lawyer, Gregory Price. After that call, he had asked to see me. He said there were things I needed to know, things I should have been told 5 years ago. But I asked him to wait. I told him I had a family dinner and that we could talk afterward. I don't know why I did that. Maybe because a part of me still wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding. that my son hadn't betrayed me. Susan knocked on my door mid-morning. She had a small cake with one candle. "So you don't spend your birthday without blowing out at least one candle," she said with a sad smile. We sat in my living room eating cake with watery coffee. She looked at me as if she wanted to say something but didn't dare. "What is it?" I asked. "You're acting strange. Stranger than usual." Something happened. I told her about the call to the lawyer, about his mysterious words, about the feeling that something terrible was about to be revealed. Susan put her plate aside. "Eleanor, listen to me carefully. Wherever you go tonight, don't you stay quiet. If something doesn't seem right, say something. If someone disrespects you, get up and leave. You don't owe anyone anything, especially not someone who has made you feel small your whole life." "He's my son," I whispered, "and you are his mother, the one who broke her back for him, the one who sold her wedding ring to give him a future. Don't you forget that when he tries to make you feel like you're the one who should be grateful." Her words cut deep. She hugged me tight before she left. "Call me when you get home." I don't care what time it is. I was left alone watching the clock. The hours passed like slow torture. I showered. I put on the only decent dress I had, a brown dress that was already faded, but at least didn't have holes. I combed my hair in front of the mirror and saw an old, tired, finished woman. 70 years, a whole life. And for what? To be alone in a miserable apartment, waiting for my son to give me scraps of attention once a year. Michael sent a taxi to pick me up at 7. The driver was kind. He asked if I was going to a celebration. I told him yes. It was my birthday. He congratulated me. I thanked him. I didn't tell him I felt like I was going to my own funeral. When the taxi stopped in front of Michael's house, my stomach twisted. The house was lit up. 3 floors of luxury that I never understood how my son could afford. Perfectly manicured lawns. Expensive cars in the driveway. All so different from the apartment where I counted pennies to buy rice. I rang the bell. Jessica opened the door. She was wearing a dress that probably cost more than my rent for 6 months. Her smile was perfect. Too perfect. "Eleanor, so glad you made it. Happy birthday." She gave me 2 kisses in the air. She didn't even touch my face. I walked in, and the smell of expensive food hit me. Shrimp, wine, freshly baked bread, everything I couldn't afford. She led me to the living room. Michael was there with the kids. He stood up to greet me. "Mom, happy birthday." He hugged me. But it was an empty hug, the kind you give out of obligation. My grandchildren said hello from the sofa without getting up. They offered a mechanical "hi, Grandma," and went back to their phones. I sat in a chair, feeling like an extra at my own celebration. Jessica brought wine glasses. "Would you like one, Eleanor?" "No, thank you. Water is fine." "Are you sure?" "It's a really nice Italian wine." "I'm sure." Michael was nervous. I could tell. He was fidgeting. He checked his phone every 2 minutes. He made conversation, but his words sounded hollow. Rehearsed. 30 minutes of forced conversation passed. Superficial questions about my health. Comments about the weather. Nothing real. Nothing deep. I just wanted the dinner to be over so I could leave. And then the doorbell rang. Michael went pale. Jessica dropped her glass but caught it before it shattered. They looked at each other with an expression I couldn't decipher. Fear. Panic. Something like that. "Are you expecting someone else?" I asked. "No," Michael said quickly. Too quickly. Must be a mistake. But the doorbell rang again. More insistent this time. Jessica went to open it. I heard voices at the entrance. A woman's voice I recognized immediately, even though it had been months since I'd heard it. Catherine, my sister. She swept into the living room like a hurricane. Elegant as always. A sharp gray pantsuit. High heels. Expensive perfume. Perfect hair. She was carrying a large gift wrapped in gold paper and a bottle of wine. "Eleanor?" she shouted excitedly when she saw me. She ran to hug me. A real hug. The kind that squeezes tight. "Happy birthday, sister. 70 years. I can't believe it." I was in shock. "Catherine, I didn't know you were coming. I wanted to surprise you. Michael told me you were celebrating your birthday, and I couldn't miss it." 70 years doesn't happen every day. I looked at Michael. He hadn't told her. That was obvious from his face. Catherine had come on her own, and he wasn't expecting her. He didn't want her there. Aunt Catherine, what a surprise, Michael said, his voice tense. We didn't know you were coming. That's why it's a surprise, nephew. Catherine sat next to me and took my hand. How are you, Eleanor? You look thinner. I'm fine, I lied. Are you sure? Are you eating well? Is what you have enough? The questions made me uncomfortable. Not because they were rude, but because they were real. Because they touched on the truth I always hid. Yes, everything's fine. Catherine looked at me as if she didn't believe me, but she didn't press. Instead, she turned to Michael and Jessica. What a beautiful house you have. Every time I come, I'm more impressed. How's business, Michael? Good. Everything's good. I'm glad. Because I know it's not easy to maintain a lifestyle like this. The kids' private schools, the cars, this house. It all costs money. But I imagine with the investments you made, it's been going very well. Michael cleared his throat. I've been lucky. Luck helps. But so does the initial capital, right? The air grew tense. I didn't understand why. But something in Catherine's tone was different. Like she was playing a game where only she knew the rules. Jessica appeared from the kitchen. Dinner is ready. Let's move to the dining room. We all moved to the enormous dining room. A wooden table that could seat 12 people. Fine china, silverware, cloth napkins. All so elegant. All so far from my reality. They sat me at the head of the table. As the guest of honor, Catherine sat to my right. Michael and Jessica sat across from us. The kids were at the ends, quiet and bored. The food was exquisite. Salad with ingredients I didn't recognize. Baked salmon, herbed potatoes. Expensive wine that everyone drank except me. Polite conversation that said nothing. And then Catherine put her fork down on her plate. She took a long sip of wine. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. And she said the words that would change everything. Eleanor, I want to ask you something I've been curious about for a while. Are you enjoying your $500,000 trust fund? The world stopped. The noise in the dining room disappeared. All I could hear was my heart pounding in my ears. $500,000. A trust fund. The words made no sense. What trust fund are you talking about? I asked, my voice trembling. Catherine frowned. The trust fund your husband Arthur left for you before he died. I was there when he signed the documents. $500,000. So you could have a dignified old age. So you would never lack for anything. Tears began to sting my eyes. I don't know anything about that. Catherine set her glass down with a sharp tap. Her face changed completely. She was no longer the sweet sister. She was the relentless businesswoman. She turned to Michael and Jessica. What did you do with the money? The silence that followed that question was so heavy I could feel it crushing my chest. Michael and Jessica had frozen completely, like statues of salt, as if time itself had stopped just for them. My grandchildren looked confused, glancing from one adult to another, not understanding what was happening. I didn't fully understand either, but something inside me already knew the truth. I had known it since the call with the lawyer. I had known it since Michael's strange visits. Maybe I had known it for 5 years but refused to see it. Aunt Catherine, Michael began, his voice trembling. I think there's a misunderstanding here. There is no misunderstanding. Catherine cut him off with a coldness I had never heard from her. I was there. In Gregory Price's office. Your father asked me to be a witness when he signed those documents. $500,000 in an irrevocable trust for Eleanor. With guaranteed monthly payments for life, $4,000 a month. All legally protected so she would never have to worry about money. $4,000 a month. I lived on $750. The words wouldn't fit in my head. They couldn't be real. Mom, Michael said, finally looking at me. Let me explain. But Catherine held up her hand. No. First, answer my question. Where is that money? Why is your mother living in a miserable apartment on a check that's not even enough for her to eat well? Why does she know nothing about the trust fund? Jessica shot up from her chair so fast it almost fell over. I need to use the restroom, she mumbled, and practically ran out of the dining room. The kids got up too. Can we go to our rooms? The oldest one asked. Go, Michael said without looking at them. It was just the three of us. Catherine, furious, Michael, terrified, and me in the middle, feeling my world crumble piece by piece. Michael, I said, in a voice I didn't recognize as my own, is what your aunt is saying true? He ran his hands over his face. He was sweating. His hands were shaking. Mom, it's complicated. It's not complicated, Catherine intervened. It's quite simple. Yes or no? Did you know about the trust fund? Silence. Did you know? My sister insisted. Yes, Michael whispered finally. I knew. The words hit me like stones, like blows, like a physical betrayal that took my breath away. And why didn't I know? I asked, feeling the tears start to fall uncontrollably. Michael wouldn't look me in the eyes. Dad. Dad named me the administrator of the trust. He left me in charge of managing everything. I thought it was better to use it for investments, to grow the money, to secure the family's future. The future of what family? Catherine asked with contempt. Your future? Because you clearly didn't care about your mother's future. She is the beneficiary, not you. That money was for her. I was going to give it to her. Michael defended himself weakly. When the time was right? When? I shouted. I couldn't hold it back. 70 years of holding everything in silence, and finally, something inside me broke. When was the right time, Michael? When I starved to death? When I couldn't pay my rent anymore? When? Mom, it's not like that. Then how is it? My voice trembled with rage and pain. Tell me how, for 5 years, I have lived on less than $800 a month while you had my money. Tell me how I've sold my belongings just to eat while you bought luxury cars. Tell me how I felt like a burden to you when this whole time you were living off what was mine. Catherine took out her phone. I'm calling Gregory Price right now. He has all the documents, all the proof, and we are going to clear this up once and for all. Aunt Catherine, wait, Michael pleaded. That's not necessary. Oh yes, it is. Catherine was already dialing the number. Very necessary. Michael looked at me with pleading eyes. Mom, please. We can fix this in the family. We don't need to get lawyers involved. Fix it how? I asked. By giving me whatever crumbs you decide to give me when it suits you? By keeping on lying to me? Jessica returned to the dining room. Her eyes were red. She had been crying. She stood by the door as if ready to bolt at any second. Catherine had the phone to her ear. Gregory, it's Catherine. I'm here with my sister, Eleanor. We need you to come over. Urgently. Now. She paused. Yes, it's about Arthur's trust. Another pause. Excellent. We'll wait for you. She hung up and looked at all of us. He's on his way. He's bringing all the documents. We're going to settle this tonight. You can't do this, Jessica said in a shrill voice. This is our house, and that is my sister's money, Catherine retorted coldly. The money you two stole. We didn't steal anything, Michael protested. I was the legal administrator. I had the right to make decisions. You had the right to manage the money for your mother's benefit, not your own. Catherine moved closer to him. Do you know what this is called? Embezzlement, fraud, theft, and it can put you in jail. Michael turned even paler. I didn't want to hurt Mom. I just thought I could make better use of the money. Invest it. Multiply it. And did you multiply it? Catherine asked. Where is the original $500,000 plus the earnings from 5 years of investments? Because from what I can see, it's in this house, in those cars, in the expensive clothes your wife wears. All of it built with your mother's money while she went hungry. I was still sitting there, listening to it all as if it were a movie, as if it weren't my life, as if it weren't my son they were talking about. My son who had stolen from me, who had lied to me, who had let me suffer while he lived like a king on my money. Michael, I said finally, my voice calm. Too calm, the calm that comes after the storm. Look me in the eye. He slowly raised his gaze. Did you ever feel guilty? Ever, in these 5 years, Did you think about me living alone in that awful apartment while you slept in your bed with expensive sheets bought with my money? Mom. Answer me. Yes or no? Silence. That silence told me everything I needed to know. And you? I turned to Jessica. You knew. She nodded, almost imperceptibly. A coward to the very end. She couldn't even admit it out loud. You two, I said, standing up from my chair, watched me struggle. You watched me count pennies. You watched me wear the same worn-out clothes over and over. You watched me turn down invitations because I didn't even have money for the bus. And you said nothing. You did nothing. You just kept taking my money and letting me believe I was a burden to you. The tears were falling, but my voice wasn't shaking. Something had changed inside me. Something had broken, but something had also grown stronger. The worst part, I continued, is not that you stole the money. The worst part is that you stole my dignity. You made me feel useless, stupid, an old woman who was good for nothing. You made me believe I should be grateful for the scraps you gave me. And you knew the truth the entire time. Michael tried to come closer, but I held up my hand. Don't touch me. Mom, forgive me. I can pay you back. I swear I. With what? Catherine asked. Because if you spent it all on this luxury life, where are you going to get $500,000 plus 5 years of monthly payments you never gave her? We are talking about more than $700,000. The figure made me dizzy. $700,000. A lifetime of security they had taken from me. The doorbell rang. Catherine went to open it. She returned with a man in his 60s. Dark suit, leather briefcase, serious expression. Good evening, the man said. I'm Gregory Price. I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances, Mrs. Eleanor. I stood up. My legs were shaking. You spoke to me on the phone. Yes, I did. And I deeply regret not insisting on speaking with you directly 5 years ago. I assumed your son had informed you of everything. That was a mistake on my part. He opened his briefcase and took out a thick folder. He placed it on the dining room table. It's all here. The will, the trust, the administration documents, all signed by your husband and by Michael as administrator. He opened the folder and started showing me papers. My vision was blurry from the tears, but I could make out the figures. $500,000, monthly payments of $4,000. My name on all the documents as the sole beneficiary. Your husband was very clear, Gregory explained. This money was only for you. Michael was authorized to manage it, but with the legal obligation to deliver the monthly payments to you without fail. Any deviation of those funds for personal use constitutes a crime. Michael sank into a chair. Jessica was crying silently. I remained standing, looking at those papers that represented the deepest betrayal I had ever experienced. Gregory Price spread the documents out on the table like cards in a macabre game. Every paper was more proof of the lie I had lived for 5 years. I looked at them, unable to fully process it. My brain refused to accept this was all real. Mrs. Eleanor, the lawyer said, his voice firm but not cruel. Did you receive any monthly payments from this trust fund in the last 5 years? No, I answered, my voice a thread. I didn't know it existed. Did they ever explain the terms of your husband's will to you? Michael told me there were some debts, that we had to sell the family home to pay them, that only a small Social Security check was left for me. Gregory shook his head. There were no debts. The house was sold, yes, but the money from that sale, plus your husband's savings and his life insurance, totaled the $500,000 that make up the trust. It was all intended for you. I sat down before I fell. My legs wouldn't hold me. The house, too, even that. Your husband left clear instructions to sell the property and add that value to the trust to maximize your monthly income. You should have been living on $4,000 a month, comfortably, without worries. $4,000 a month for 5 years. I did the quick math in my head. $240,000 I never saw. $240,000 my son had used while I counted pennies to buy bread. Michael, Gregory said, turning to my son, where is the money? My son had his head in his hands. I invested it. In what? In this house. In the business, in the kids' schools, in everything. Do you have records of these investments? Account statements? Documents proving that money was invested with the intent to generate returns for your mother? Silence. I'll ask you another way, the lawyer continued. Can you return the original $500,000 plus the monthly payments you owe your mother? More silence. Jessica was sobbing louder now. He can't, Catherine said with contempt. He spent it all. On luxuries. On appearances. On living a life that wasn't his. Gregory pulled out more papers. I have the bank statements for the trust here. During the first year after your husband's death, Michael transferred $50,000 for the down payment on this house. Another $100,000 went into renovations, $30,000 for a car, and so on. In 2 years, he had almost completely emptied the principal fund. And the other 3 years? Catherine asked. Loans against the trust, more transfers, small amounts here and there that add up to significant figures. By the time we realized what was happening, there was practically nothing left. We? I repeated. You knew about this. Gregory looked down. For the first time, the lawyer looked ashamed. I knew Michael was making moves. He is the legal administrator, so technically, he was authorized. But I assumed you were aware. That he consulted with you. That it was a family agreement. I never imagined you knew nothing. Why didn't you contact me to confirm? My voice sounded harsher than I intended. I should have. It's my professional responsibility. And I offer you my sincerest apologies. But I must also tell you that Michael assured me several times that you were well cared for, that you were living with them, that you didn't need the money monthly because he was covering all your expenses. I looked at Michael with a mixture of horror and disgust. You told him I lived with you. Michael didn't answer. He couldn't even look at me. You told him that, I shouted. I didn't care about controlling myself anymore. You lied to the lawyer, telling him you were taking care of me while I was living alone eating canned soup? Mom, I thought eventually I would bring you to live with us. When? In 10 more years? Never? That was just another lie you told yourself so you could sleep at night. Jessica finally spoke. Her voice was shrill and pathetic. We wanted to help you, Eleanor. But we had expenses. The kids need so many things. The house is expensive to maintain. It wasn't out of malice. Catherine laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was a laugh full of contempt. Not out of malice? Then what was it? Ignorance? Greed? You justify stealing from an elderly woman because your kids need to go to private schools? We didn't steal from her, Jessica insisted weakly. Yes, you did, Gregory said firmly. Legally, that is exactly what you did. Embezzlement of trust funds, fraud, financial elder abuse. Those are all criminal offenses, in addition to civil ones. Fear settled on Michael's face. Criminal? But I'm her son. She's not going to press charges. Everyone looked at me. I stayed silent. I didn't know what I felt. Too many emotions at once. Pain, rage, betrayal. But also something new. Something I hadn't felt in years. Power, the feeling that, finally, I was in control. What's left of the trust? Catherine asked Gregory. The lawyer checked his papers. Approximately $30,000. That's all that wasn't squandered. $30,000 out of $500,000. My husband had worked his entire life to secure my future, and his own son had destroyed it in less than 5 years. And what are my sister's options? Catherine continued. Gregory adjusted his glasses. Several. She can file a civil lawsuit to recover the funds plus damages. We're talking about approximately $800,000. She can press criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. Or she can try to reach a private settlement with her son for the return of the money. Which do you recommend? Catherine asked. It depends on what Mrs. Eleanor wants to achieve. If she wants to recover her money quickly, a private settlement might be faster. If she wants justice and real consequences, the legal path is more appropriate, though longer. I stood up from the chair. I walked to the window. Outside, everything looked normal. The perfectly manicured lawn. The streetlights illuminating the neighborhood of expensive houses. None of it was real. It was all an illusion built with my money and my suffering. Mom, Michael said from behind me, please, Talk to me. Tell me what you want me to do. I turned around slowly. I looked him in the eyes. Those eyes that once looked at me with a child's love. Those eyes that now only reflected fear and guilt. What do I want you to do? I repeated his words. I want you to tell me the truth. For the first time in 5 years. Did you plan this from the beginning? From the moment Dad died, did you already know you were going to take my money? No, it wasn't like that. At first, I just took a little for the down payment on the house. I thought I'd pay it back, but then we needed more, and it got out of hand. And you never thought to tell me the truth? To give me at least part of what was mine? He looked down. I was afraid you'd be angry, that you'd judge me, and you preferred to let me live in misery? You preferred to watch me suffer rather than face your mistake? I thought you were fine, that you didn't need that much, that you were happy with your simple life. Those words stabbed me like knives. Happy? You think I was happy going hungry? Happy wearing clothes with holes? Happy feeling like a burden to you every time I had to ask for a miserable $200? Mom. Don't call me Mom. A mother, to you, was someone to be used and discarded. Someone whose sacrifice meant nothing. Someone you could lie to and steal from without remorse. Jessica approached timidly. Eleanor, please, think of the children. If this goes public, if there's a trial, they're going to suffer. They'll lose their father. I looked at her in disbelief. Are you asking me to think of your children? You, who never thought of me? What are you going to tell them when they ask why their father is in trouble? That he stole from his grandmother and she had the nerve to defend herself? Catherine stood beside me. You don't have to decide anything right now, Eleanor. Take your time. Think carefully about what you want. Gregory closed his briefcase. Mrs. Eleanor, I'm going to prepare a full report of everything. Bank movements, transfers, all documented. And then you can decide what to do with that information. How much time do I have to decide? I asked. Legally, you have several years to file a lawsuit, but I would recommend acting soon. The more time passes, the harder it will be to recover the assets. I nodded. My head was spinning. I needed to get out of there. I needed air. I needed to be alone to process all of this. I'm leaving, I announced. I'll take you, Catherine said immediately. Michael took a step forward. Mom, wait. Don't go like this. We can talk more, we can. There is nothing more to talk about tonight, I interrupted him. You did what you did. Now I'm going to do what I have to do. I walked to the door. Catherine followed me. Gregory gathered his papers and walked out with us. Before leaving, I turned back one last time. Michael was standing in the middle of his expensive living room in his luxurious house, surrounded by everything he bought with my money. He looked small, scared, but I no longer felt pity for him. Happy birthday to me, I said, and I walked out. The silence in Catherine's car was almost deafening. She drove, focused on the road. I was in the passenger seat, my gaze lost out the window. The city lights blurred past. Or maybe it was just that I couldn't stop crying. They weren't noisy tears. I wasn't sobbing. I just let them fall as my head tried to process everything that had just happened. My 70th birthday had been the worst and most revealing day of my life. The day I discovered that for 5 years I had been a victim of my own son. Do you want me to take you to your apartment? Catherine asked softly. Yes, I whispered. We drove in silence for another 15 minutes. When we reached my building, Catherine turned off the engine. Do you want me to come up with you? No, I need to be alone. Eleanor, you shouldn't be alone tonight. You've just taken a terrible blow. I've been alone for 5 years. One more night isn't going to change anything. Catherine sighed. At least promise me you'll call me if you need anything. Anytime. I don't care. I nodded. I got out of the car and walked to the entrance. My legs felt heavy, as if I were carrying the whole world. I climbed the stairs slowly. Each step was an effort. When I finally reached my door, my hands were shaking so much it was hard to get the key in the lock. I entered the apartment and saw it with new eyes. This miserable place, this tiny room, this kitchen where barely one person could fit. This bathroom with broken pipes. All of this had been my life while my son lived like a king. I sat on the old, second-hand sofa and finally let it all out. I cried like I hadn't cried since my husband's funeral. I cried for the 5 lost years, for the hungry nights, for the shame of not being able to buy my grandchildren a decent Christmas gift, for every time I felt useless and old and like a burden. But I also cried with rage, a rage that had been stored up for 70 years. Rage against a world that taught me to be quiet, against a life that taught me to endure, against myself for having accepted it all without ever questioning. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark. Eventually, I heard a knock on the door. It was Susan. "I saw you'd arrived," she said when I opened it. She was carrying 2 steaming mugs. "I made you some tea, and I'm not taking no for an answer." I let her in. We sat together on the sofa. She didn't ask me anything, she just waited. And I, after taking a sip of tea, told her everything, every word, every revelation, every betrayal. Susan listened in silence. When I finished, she put her mug down on the table and took my hands. "Eleanor, do you know what just happened tonight?" "I found out my son stole from me." "No." "Well, yes, but something more important happened too. You stopped swallowing it. You stopped being quiet. For the first time in your life, you demanded answers. You demanded the truth. And that, my friend, is the beginning of everything." "I don't feel strong," I admitted. "I feel destroyed." Being destroyed and being weak are not the same thing. Sometimes you have to fall apart completely to be able to rebuild yourself the right way, without the lies, without the weight of others' expectations. Her words resonated with me. She was right. Something had changed tonight. I hadn't just discovered the truth, I had also discovered my voice. The voice I had silenced for 70 years because I was taught that good women don't complain, that good mothers forgive everything, that good wives obey. "What are you going to do?" Susan asked. "I don't know yet. The lawyer is going to send me all the documentation. I have options. But I don't know which one to choose. Which one scares you the most?" The question took me by surprise. "The one that scares you the most?" "Fear, yes. Sometimes the thing that scares us the most is what we most need to do." I thought about that. What scared me the most? Suing Michael? Pressing criminal charges? Destroying the perfect image he had built? No. What scared me most was something else. "I'm afraid to be free," I said quietly. "I'm afraid to have money. I'm afraid to not need him. Because then I have no excuse to keep being invisible, to keep being small, to keep accepting scraps." Susan smiled sadly. "That's exactly what you need to face, then." She stayed with me late into the night. When she finally left, I stayed awake in the darkness, thinking, remembering, processing. I remembered the girl I was, the one who dreamed of being a teacher. But my parents said women don't need to study that much, that it was better to marry young and start a family. I remembered the young woman who wanted to work. But my husband said wives stay home, that my job was to take care of the children and keep the house clean. I remembered the mother who wanted to do things for herself. But my children told me to rest, that I had already done enough, that they would take care of everything. My whole life had been a series of voices telling me what to do, what to think, what to feel. And I had obeyed because I thought that was love. I thought sacrificing myself was the right thing to do. I thought disappearing was noble. But I had learned something tonight. Sacrifice without reciprocity isn't love, it's self-destruction. And I had been destroying myself for 70 years, thinking I was being virtuous. The next few days were strange. Gregory Price sent me all the documentation as promised. Thick folders full of papers showing every dollar Michael had taken, every transfer, every lie documented in bank statements. Catherine visited me every day. She helped me review the documents. She explained legal terms I didn't understand. She reminded me over and over that I had done nothing wrong, that the blame was entirely Michael's. Michael called. Many times. He left messages, pleading messages, messages promising to pay me back, messages where he cried and begged for forgiveness. I didn't answer a single one. I wasn't ready. Jessica called too. Her messages were different. They were justifications. They were attempts to make me feel guilty. Think about the family. Don't be selfish. The children need you. As if I owed them anything after what they did to me. Susan sat with me in the afternoons. We drank tea. We talked about everything and nothing. She shared stories from her own life. About how her children had also disappointed her at times. About how she had learned to set boundaries. To say no. To choose herself without feeling guilty. "Do you know the difference between us and our daughter's generation?" she asked me one day. "They learned they could have it all. We learned we deserved nothing, and both lessons are wrong." A week after my birthday, Catherine arrived with a proposal. "I've been talking to Gregory," she said, sitting on my sofa. "And I think we have a strategy." "What kind of strategy?" "One that gets you your money back, but also your dignity. One that makes Michael face the consequences, but without completely destroying the children, who are innocent in all of this." I listened as Catherine explained the plan. It was smart. It was fair. But it was also relentless. It required me to be firm. To not give in. To not let guilt or maternal love make me back down. "Can I do it?" I asked aloud, though the question was more for myself. "You can," Catherine affirmed. "But only if you really want to. No one will judge you if you decide to forgive and forget. It's your decision." "What would you do?" My sister looked at me intently. "I know what I would do, but I'm not you. I didn't spend 5 years living in this apartment. I didn't have to sell my things to eat. I didn't have to endure my own son, making me feel like trash while he lived off my money. This decision is yours alone." I didn't sleep that night. I paced the small apartment, thinking, weighing options, imagining futures. Finally, as the sun began to rise, I knew what I was going to do. And for the first time in 5 years, maybe in 70 years, I felt certain about a decision. Not because someone told me it was the right one, but because I knew it was. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. I looked at the woman staring back at me. I was 70 years old, deep wrinkles, completely white hair, hands worn from years of cleaning and cooking and serving others. But I also saw something new in her eyes, something that hadn't been there before. Determination. Strength, the kind of strength that doesn't come from yelling or fighting, the kind of strength that comes from knowing your worth and never letting anyone take it from you again. I didn't need to raise my voice to be heard, I told my reflection. I just needed to stop lowering it. I picked up the phone. I dialed Gregory Price's number. When he answered, I said the words that would change everything. "I want you to prepare the documents. We're going to do this. We are going to get back what is mine, and we are going to do it the right way. With justice, with dignity, but without mercy." 3 days later, Michael and Jessica were sitting across from me in Gregory Price's office. The lawyer had arranged this meeting as part of the strategy. One last chance to resolve everything without going to court. A chance that I was going to control completely. Michael looked terrible. Sunken eyes. Unshaven. Wrinkled clothes. Jessica was rigid in her chair, arms crossed, with a victim expression that made me sick. Catherine was sitting by my side. Gregory was at his desk, with a mountain of documents in front of him. I was in the center, calm, firm, ready. "Thank you for coming," Gregory began. "We are here to reach an agreement that avoids a long and costly legal process for both parties." "Mom," Michael interrupted immediately. "I just want to say I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I messed up. I know there's no excuse for what I did, but I swear I will pay you back everything." I held up my hand. "Don't talk yet. First, you're going to listen." He went quiet. He looked like a scolded child, but I no longer felt pity for him. "For 5 years," I began, my voice quiet but firm, "you stole from me. You lied to me. You let me live in poverty while you spent my money on luxuries. You made me feel like I was a burden, that I should be grateful for the scraps you gave me. You knew the truth that whole time, and you said nothing." "Mom, I'm not finished yet," I cut him off. "You had 1,000 opportunities to tell me the truth. 1,000 opportunities to do the right thing. And every single time, you chose the lie. You chose your comfort over my well-being. So now, the rules have changed. Now, I choose." Gregory pushed the documents across the table. These are the options. Option 1. We file a civil lawsuit for embezzlement of trust funds. We seek full restitution plus damages. That includes accrued interest and compensation for emotional distress. We're talking about approximately $800,000. Michael turned pale. I don't have $800,000. Then, you'll sell the house, Catherine said coldly. You'll sell the cars. You'll liquidate everything. And if it's not enough, you'll work for the rest of your life paying off the debt. Option 2, Gregory continued. We press criminal charges. Fraud, financial elder abuse, embezzlement. These are crimes that can carry a prison sentence of 5 to 10 years. Jessica sobbed. You can't do that. The children need their father. The children need to learn that actions have consequences, I replied. That stealing from your own mother doesn't go unpunished. Option 3, Gregory said. We reach a private settlement. You return the money on the terms your mother sets. You sign legally binding documents acknowledging the debt. And if you default, we automatically proceed with options 1 and 2. What? What would be the terms? Michael asked, his voice broken. I looked at Gregory. He nodded. It was my turn to speak. You are going to sell the house, I said, immediately. That house was bought with my money. It no longer belongs to you. Where will we live? Jessica asked hysterically. Wherever you can afford to live on your own money, like I had to do for 5 years. You will liquidate the investment accounts, I continued. You will sell the luxury car. You will transfer all of that money into a new account in my name, which Gregory will manage. All of that. It won't be enough, Michael said. The house has a mortgage. I have debts. Then you will work to pay them. You will pay me $1,000 a month for the next 20 years if necessary. Legally binding, with interest. And if you miss a single payment, I proceed with the lawsuit and the criminal charges. $1,000 a month is a lot, Jessica protested. We have expenses. The kids. The kids can go to public school, Catherine interrupted her. Like millions of other children in this country. They won't die from not having private tennis lessons. Furthermore, I added, I want one more thing. I want you to tell your children the truth. I want you to explain to them exactly what you did. I want you to teach them that stealing is wrong, even when it's from family, especially when it's from family. Tears were streaming down Michael's face. Mom, you're going to destroy my family. No, I said firmly. You destroyed your family when you chose to steal from me. I am just reclaiming what is mine. And if your family doesn't survive that, it's because it was built on lies from the beginning. Gregory pushed the documents toward Michael. You have 2 choices. You sign this agreement now, or we see you in court next week. You decide. Michael looked at the papers. He looked at Jessica. He looked at Catherine. Finally, he looked at me. Searching for compassion. Searching for me to back down. Searching for the mother who always forgave everything. But that mother didn't exist anymore. Sign it, I said, or face the full consequences of your actions. With trembling hands, Michael picked up the pen. He read the documents. Every page was a reminder of his betrayal. Every clause was a debt he would have to pay. He signed. Jessica also had to sign as a co-debtor. They both committed to paying everything back, to selling everything, to paying me monthly, and to facing severe legal consequences if they failed. When they finished, Gregory collected the documents. These are legally binding. You have 30 days to sell the property and transfer the initial funds. The monthly payments begin the following month. Michael just sat there, destroyed. But I didn't feel victorious. I just felt a profound exhaustion. The exhaustion of 70 years carrying the weight of others' expectations. Anything else you want to say to me? I asked him. Are you? Are you ever going to forgive me? His voice was barely a whisper. I don't know, I answered honestly. Maybe, maybe not. But that's no longer up to you. You did what you did. Now, I'm going to live my life, with or without your regret. I stood up. Catherine stood with me. We walked out of that office, leaving behind a son who had learned the hardest lesson of his life. The lesson that mothers have limits too. That love does not mean allowing abuse. That forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or letting it happen again. Outside, the sun was shining. It was a beautiful day, and for the first time in 5 years, I could see the beauty without it being stained by worry over money. "How do you feel?" Catherine asked. "Free," I replied. "Finally free." 6 months later, I was sitting on the balcony of my new apartment, drinking coffee. Not instant. Real, freshly ground coffee. The kind I had always seen in stores but never allowed myself to buy. The apartment wasn't large, but it was mine. 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, a bathroom that worked, and this small balcony where I could watch the sunrise every morning. I had rented it with the money recovered from the sale of Michael's house. Gregory had handled everything impeccably. The house sold in 3 weeks. After paying the mortgage and the debts, $200,000 was left, which went directly into my account. The cars were sold, the accounts were liquidated. In total, I had recovered nearly $300,000. It wasn't the original $500,000, but it was enough. More than enough for a 70-year-old woman who just needed peace and dignity. Gregory had reinvested the money in a new trust. This time, I was the sole administrator. No one else had access. No one else could make decisions about my future. The monthly payments of $2,500 arrived in my account on time every month. And Michael was making his additional $1,000 payments. For now, Catherine visited often. Sometimes we'd go out for lunch at nice restaurants. Other times we'd just walk in the park, talking about life. She had helped me open my eyes, to find my voice, to understand that being strong doesn't mean yelling. It means knowing your worth and not letting anyone take it from you. Susan was still my neighbor. Well, we didn't live in the same building anymore, but we saw each other almost every day. We drank tea. We shared stories. She had taught me that true friendship doesn't need shared blood. It just needs mutual respect and honesty. Michael, we didn't talk much. He called once a month. Short, awkward conversations. He told me they had rented a smaller apartment, that Jessica had to get a job, that the kids were adjusting to public school. He'd ask me how I was. I'd answer in monosyllables. I hadn't forgiven. I wasn't sure if I ever would. But there was something more important than forgiveness. I had found peace. Peace with what happened. Peace with my decisions. Peace with myself. My grandchildren sent me messages sometimes. Short, confused messages. Michael had told them a softened version of the truth. He'd said he made a mistake with Grandma's money, that he was trying to fix it. The kids didn't fully understand. But that was okay. Someday, they would. I had started doing things I never allowed myself. I took painting classes. It turned out I had a knack for landscapes. Nothing professional, but I liked it. It made me happy, and that was enough. I joined a book club at the local library. Women my age who met once a week to talk about books. Some had stories similar to mine. Children who had disappointed them. Families who had used them. We were all learning to live for ourselves after 70 years of living for others. One afternoon, while I was painting on my balcony, the phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated to answer. But something told me to. "Mrs. Eleanor?" It was a young woman's voice. "Yes, this is she. My name is Maria. I'm a social worker at the community center. One of the women in your book club told our coordinator your story, and we were wondering if you'd be interested in speaking with other seniors who are going through situations of financial abuse within their families." I was quiet, processing the request. "You don't have to decide now," Maria continued, "but we think your experience could help other women. Help them find their voice. Help them understand they're not alone." "Let me think about it," I replied. I couldn't sleep that night, thinking about that call. Me, helping others? Me, sharing my story? For 70 years, I had been invisible, silent. Now I was going to speak out? I told Catherine the next day. She smiled. "Remember what I told you months ago? That sometimes you have to fall apart to rebuild yourself correctly. You fell apart. You rebuilt yourself. And now you can help others do the same." "I'm scared," I admitted. Scared is good. It means it matters. It means it's real. A week later, I was sitting in a circle of 10 women at the community center, all of them over 60, all with stories of families who had used them, who had stolen from them, who had made them feel invisible. I told them my story. No sugarcoating, no softening, the whole truth. The trust fund, the betrayal, the poverty, and also the recovery, the justice, the peace. When I finished, there were tears in everyone's eyes. But there was something else, too. Hope, recognition, the understanding that they weren't crazy, that they weren't alone, that there was a path forward. A woman raised her hand timidly. How did you find the courage to confront them? I didn't find it, I answered honestly. I built it, day by day, decision by decision, by stopping myself from swallowing what was poisoning me, by learning that my voice mattered, that my life mattered, that I mattered. It's been almost a year now since that night of my birthday, since the revelation that changed everything. I still live in my apartment with the balcony. I still paint. I still read. I still drink real coffee every morning. But I also do something else. Twice a month, I meet with that group of women. I help them understand their rights. I go with them to talk to lawyers. I support them when they're scared. I remind them that it's not selfish to take care of yourself, that it's not cruel to set boundaries, that they deserve dignity, no matter their age. Michael keeps paying. Jessica keeps working. The grandchildren are growing up. Maybe someday our relationship will get better, or maybe not. But that no longer defines my worth or my happiness. This morning, as I drank my coffee watching the sunrise, I thought about the entire journey, about the woman I was a year ago, invisible, silent, convinced her only value was in serving others. And I looked at the woman I am now, visible, with a voice, convinced that her value is simply in existing. I got up and went to the mirror. The same 70-year-old woman looked back at me, the same wrinkles, the same white hair, but her eyes were different. They no longer reflected resignation. They reflected peace, strength, purpose. They stole my years and called it care, I said to my reflection. But I took them back, silently, with truth and with courage. I smiled, a real smile, the kind that comes from the soul, because I finally understood something fundamental. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Strength isn't always violent. Sometimes it's serene. And freedom doesn't always come from the outside. Sometimes it comes from within, from deciding that you deserve more, and then doing whatever it takes to get it. If this story touched your heart, if something in it resonated with your own life, or the life of someone you know, stay with me, because there are more stories like this. Stories of women who found their voice when everyone told them to be quiet. Stories of silent justice, of recovered dignity, of rebuilt lives. The next story might sound painfully familiar, or it might be exactly what you need to hear today, because it is never too late to stop being invisible. It is never too late to reclaim what is yours, and it is never, ever too late to choose yourself.